this video, I want to talk about designing your art habits and your art environment, as also designing your art. As a while back, there was a course, an online course with Marcel van Druff, a composition. Composition is, of course, about design. And he said something interesting. He had an assignment. People were to draw their art environment, their studios, and one of the students had he talked about that. It was one of the students had drawn her studio, and on the one hand you had the table with the drawing tools where she drew, and on the other side she had a fitness equipment. And he said, "Oh, mind and body, yin and yang," and that's a very powerful thing to keep in mind. He was right. I mean, she had the place where she drew, where she developed her mind, and she had a place where she worked out, where she developed her body. So there's a yin and yang to it, two sides. There's going to be a thread during this video. The yin and yang is a very powerful way of dividing things up and creating design and doing things on purpose. And basically, yin and yang is about balance. In her case, she had drawing as a mental activity and a physical activity, and it's important to keep things in balance, these things in balance. If they're not in balance, you start to run into trouble. So with example, for example, when you draw, it's yin and yang can be how much light areas you have, how many dark areas you have. But if you're drawing, for example, in the thing you see me drawing now, the face is very detailed, but then you see with his jacket in front, you see suddenly very loose, swirly lines that dance along each other. And you see lots of detailed lines in the head, and you see very few lines in the body. So that's yin and yang. These contrasts can really help create interest in the drawing also. We have, when it's not one homogeneous thing, but you have a little bit of variation. But in design in general, it's important to figure out how to idealize and simplify things, and to decide on which colors you use. For example, that's a yin and yang thing. Is it's a design choice where you can have a focal point thing you want the eye to be drawn to, so you can use much more detail there, or much more tone, or that area can be much darker or much lighter, or have a different color, for example red, or it can have much more color saturation. So and then you have the two things again. You have the drawing and you have the thing you want to draw the eye to. So those are things that are important with composition when it comes to making art. And those are creative choices basically. But it's not just that. If you look at your body of work, you can design that too. That's or a series, a drawing series. If you make a series for an exhibit, then you can really design it. It becomes an ensemble. You choose all these separate things to go together. There was one documentary about Anna Wintour once. She was the editor for Vogue, and she would be called in by fashion designers to look at collections. And it's very interesting. These fashion designers create a collection of clothing for a certain season, and it has to fit together. It has to work together as a series of clothes, but they do have to be different. I mean, you have to have a variation in it. So ensembles of things are things you design too. So you design one drawing, but you can also design a series of drawings. Or for example, when you make comics or do something else with characters, you design characters, but also you design the whole ensemble. For example, you can have what's useful to look at is the silhouette of a character. And what you want to do is to make the silhouette of each character as different as possible, so that you can recognize them just by the silhouette. But that's another thing you design. And it's just not just that. You also design your workspace. I mean, you decide what table you use, what drawing tools you use. But even there, it helps to vary things a bit. I tend to fluctuate between things. Sometimes I feel like drawing. Sometimes I feel like writing. Sometimes I feel like programming. So it's all about creating balance. It doesn't have to be yin and yang. It can be three things, I guess. But it's important to create balance in your work and vary things. So don't. Another example is should you do fundamentals? Yes, a bit, but you should also try to create the art you want to be making. So that's again a yin and yang thing, and it's something you get to design. You get to choose how much time you spend on fundamentals, how much time you spend on drawing the things you want to draw, and those are design decisions. Those are things you can craft. Um, for your drawing space, of course, you also choose what light you use, and you can hang things around you. You can hang art on the wall, art that sort of inspires you, and those are things you can design also. Um, you can design your soundscape, the things you hear behind you. You can put on a headphone and really control it, or you can be in an environment and sort of let that environment influence you, the sound of the environment. You can design your days, for example. It's if you don't design them, then it's just your time will be grabbed by the most addictive technology around. So you'll maybe be a lot on Instagram, or maybe you'll be playing a lot of computer games. That's what happens when you don't design things. It becomes really messy and really fluffy and not very powerful. Whereas if you design it, if you choose your daily schedule, if you do it on purpose, you say, okay, from then to then I have to be at school, or I have to be at work, and I have to do some shopping, and I have to do this and I have to do that, and then from that moment to that moment, I can draw. This is not always possible. If you have children, then you don't control your schedule. So all these gurus who always say are always telling you how to be very productive, I can always tell that they don't have children themselves, because then it becomes a little bit different. But even then, you do get to design things. For example, you get to design again what drawing tools you use. You can choose to have a sketchbook and pen with you. You can make the sketchbook as small as is reasonable to draw in, but also that's something you can always have with you. So those are design decisions you make. You can also design what's in your bag that you carry with you, or in your pockets. So you can you can design in such a way that you always have drawing tools with you. Um, the purpose is of all of this is to focus on what you want to achieve, and to design everything around you so that you can do that. I will continue with the subject probably later on. The video is running to an end. But think about yin and yang, and designing your environment, and designing your workspace, and designing the tools you use, and designing your drawings, etc. Okay, thank you, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye bye.